and good evening. Welcome to the Horror Screams podcast. We're part of the Horror Screams Video Vault website. I'm Stephen, and I'm joined for this episode 27 by regular co-host Sarah. Hi, Sarah. How's it going?
Oh, it's going very well. It's very blowy, but we're all good over here. We're in the midst of Storm Eunice.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, horrifying. Yeah, it's like the Wizard of Oz, isn't it?
It really is,
Been a
yeah.
bit dramatic. Yes, the UK has been struck once again by a strong breeze, and it's causing some
People's,
major damage, isn't it? It's,
yeah, fence panels and everything.
trees, yeah, around here the beams are blowing around like they've been possessed by the devil himself. Yeah, dramatic. You're just old enough to remember 1987, right, Sarah?
I am, yeah. Yeah, me and the other half were talking about this earlier on this evening as well. I do vaguely remember, I think, like a massive tree came down in our garden or something. I remember all sorts of like debris and destruction going on, yeah.
Yeah, same here. I would have been 9. No, yes, 9. Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And the usual thing happened. It was you listen to the radio, wait for the school announcement on the radio in those days. You'd hear
Hoping
loads
that
of other
your school's
schools.
closed.
Come on, Fakenham Junior, come on. And eventually,
never.
it was way down the list that day, as always. Deer, Norwich, and yeah, the school was shut. And for some reason, I think probably despite much advice to the contrary, me and my sister, I think, went out to the phone box at the end of the road, and there were tiles coming off and everything. It was pretty hairy. I don't think we had trees down. We probably did somewhere close to us, but not on our particular road, I don't think. But yeah, it was mental. And that's kind of what this hurricane or whatever it is been compared to 1987, the classic, one of the best, or worst, depending on where you were.
Yeah, it's crazy weather. I'm pretty sure this time last year we had like a good couple of feet of snow.
Oh yeah, that was a lot for us last year, wasn't it? I'd forgotten about snow. Like, if we get it, it's usually kind of February, March or something.
Yeah, it seems to be the way. But yeah, that came up on my memories the other day, and this time around we've got a bloody great old storm.
Yeah, well, the snow was quite fun.
Yeah, the snow's fun. It's more fun than a storm for sure.
Yeah, and last year it was really well timed because it was in that particularly gloomy section where it's like, lockdown 28 or something, and the schools were shut for an enormous amount of time, possibly until Easter, I think, last year. And the snow at least was a week of kind of some novelty and some fun stuff that's a bit different to being not able to go anywhere. Yeah, those were the days. 2021, we miss you. Yeah, so we're back. We're all gathered around. We had a month off because we both had to check into the Betty Ford clinic for a while. So we're back now, though, clean
and sober.
Yes, completely back to what passes for normal around here. And episode 27. We've got a really good one. Obviously, we'd say that because if it's going to be total shite, we wouldn't say that. We've got a really good one, though. We're going to be talking about the Scream movies. This was originally going to be kind of January when it maybe would have been a bit more timely. But the Scream 5, the newest Scream movie, is still out there in cinemas. As far as I can tell, it's doing really well.
Yep.
And it has single-handedly revived the franchise with Scream 6 already announced, like vultures they are. So that's quite cool. And obviously it makes it quite a timely moment to look back on the previous 4 from some time ago and the new one. So we will be talking about the 5th one, which is very new. And just a word of warning, although we'll do another one later on when it comes, we will be talking about it in a way that no doubt will spoil key parts that you won't want to hear if you have not seen it, because that would be cruel. So tune out when we tell you to in the Scream 5 chat. The other 4 are really old now, so if you haven't seen them and you're willfully listening to a Scream podcast, you'd be a bit foolish, really, to go in blind. But obviously, we'll be giving away the endings for those because they're so old. They're old news. Yes. But first, we're going to just have a brief look back on some of the stuff that we've seen in the interim between this and the previous podcast. So, Sarah, have you seen or, listened or experienced any exciting media in this last couple of months, in fact, since the last episode?
I certainly have. It kind of started off quite slow this year, to be fair. I can't remember an awful lot of anything new that I watched like kind of end of December, kind of early January. But because of the whole podcast episode and stuff, it did mean that I actually had to venture out to the cinema to see Scream.
Fantastic.
My first trip out to the cinema since the whole COVID thing. And
wow, that's quite something.
yeah, I was really nervous when I first went, because I went off on my Todd. Driving there takes me about half an hour. I was actually getting a little bit nervous, like, oh my God, I haven't done this for ages. But then as soon as I got there, I was like, yes, this is awesome, like spread out, back seat at the cinema with your snacks, watch the movie. I did actually forget where the car park validation machines were, though. I had to keep going backwards and forwards, asking
Game of
around.
Hide and seek.
Yeah, sorry. Where do I get my car parking stamp? I've forgotten. It's been so long since I've been here. But no, that was a great experience, a very good experience, and just kind of makes you think that things are now starting to go back to normal without the storms and all that kind of stuff. Things are hopefully finally going back to normal a bit more of it was, and yeah, hopefully we'll get out to see lots more at the cinema, because that was very enjoyable. But yeah, apart from that, I've watched a couple of things on Netflix recently. It's a series that a lot of zombie people are raving about. It's called All of Us Are Dead. It's a Korean zombie series, very much in the lines of Train to Busan. In fact, it actually does mention Train to Busan, just kind of like tongue in cheek. It's kind of a funny one, but also really serious. So that probably doesn't really make an awful lot of sense. Annoyingly, it's overdubbed in English, which is a little bit awkward to watch. But it starts off about a zombie apocalypse happening at a school. So it's very kiddie and stuff to start off with. The first episode is really quite slow, but it's trying to like character build and stuff. And then by the end, when the virus breaks out, it actually goes completely bonkers. The episodes are quite long. I'm only up to episode 5. But yeah, the episodes are about like just over an hour long an episode. So I've already watched about 5 hours of it. And I've still got another 6 episodes to go. Wow. There's 12 episodes in total, I think.
Wow.
But yeah, it's like loads of people are raving about it. I'm not actually quite as on board as everybody else seems to be with it, because it gets a bit lost in translation. Some of the stuff, the way they are with each other, how the Koreans and Japanese are as a people kind of doesn't come across very like normal to us Westerners, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. It does totally change it when it's dubbed, doesn't it?
It really does. I would have actually preferred to have subtitles. So you can kind of get it. It's not quite so distracting, but the zombies are awesome. It's proper, quick changing, fast, like the ones in Train to Busan.
Yeah.
And it's really brutal as well. It's got quite a large cast, and it's not afraid to kill off all people, children, best friends, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. It's had a really good reception, hasn't it? Like some of the other Korean stuff that seems to be doing amazingly well.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah, I'm keen to carry on watching the rest of it, but I feel like it's going to take me a while because they are so long, and they do have a tendency to be a little bit drawn out at times. But I will get there, and yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, Train to Busan was one of my favourites of whenever it came out of like the recent years. That was great.
Yeah,
and what's it called again? So I'm so
All
out of
of Us
touch.
Are Dead.
All of Us Are Dead. Yeah, cool. I know it's doing really well, which is good. It's cool that like South Korea's been doing great stuff in movies for years, so it's great they're getting loads of attention for this
finally.
Stuff.
Yeah, they do it really well.
And I'm guessing it will send people back to things like Train to Busan, which obviously did really well in its own terms, but now may get even more attention, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, and bring up like One Cut of the Dead and stuff like that, which is, in a way it's kind of different to that because it's not as it seems, but it's kind of a bit overlooked because you have your Trains to Busan and Seoul Station and was it Peninsula?
Oh yeah.
kind of a trilogy going on there. So this one's kind of like going on from that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds cool.
It's good, and yet that is on Netflix. The other things on Netflix I watched, I finally watched, or I say finally, I think it only came out today, the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, yeah. Is it just called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Yep, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022.
Okay. Got it.
That is what it's called. And yeah, I think that's pretty brand new, so I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but there are better ones out there. That's all I'm going to kind of say on that one. It's all right. It's very gory, and there are some really great kills, but that's kind of about it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
In a way, I'm glad they've done it. I'm glad they haven't done a series of it where, you know, you get to see Leatherface in each year at school and Leatherface getting bullied and Leatherface at the high school prom. I'm glad that at least they've just done a film of it. Man, I'm guessing that all of these things will become, well, the ones that haven't already been revived, all of these big franchise things will come back via streaming services or something if they don't do it otherwise. They
will. But yeah, it's another one that you're like, should you have bothered?
Yeah.
There's nothing very, very new about it at all. I'm looking forward to the new Evil Dead. That's posters and stuff are appearing for Evil Dead Rise now, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work because it's the posters and stuff are saying coming soon to HBO Max, aren't they? So
yeah,
but then HBO Max does get like HBO Max, I think, got some of the big movies anyway, like Matrix, because they have a thing with Warner Brothers. So I don't know if that means it will get a cinema release here and other places.
Maybe that would be good. I wasn't even thinking that. I was just hoping it'll appear on something soon. But a cinema release would be really good. But if something, if this didn't get a cinema release, I'm assuming Evil Dead possibly won't either. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. Although the remake did really well. That was probably a while ago now, but it feels recent. Yeah. The Evil Dead remake. Yeah, it's hard to tell. I guess the whole model has changed, hasn't it? The whole model for like releasing movies, the window of cinema to coming to be a rental on Amazon and things like that is so short now, and some of them are simultaneous. Like, it'd be unthought of in the past for something as huge as the new Matrix film to pretty much go straight to, well, in America at least, HBO Max at the same time it was in the cinema. Mental. But yeah, things have changed, so maybe it'll be a bit of both. But yeah,
maybe.
No, it's by, who's it by again? The Evil Dead film the new one is by a good director, isn't it? The guy that did something really good. It's gone.
Sorry, I'm very, very quickly trying to
yes, it's by a British guy.
Luke Cronin.
Who did, remind me?
Luke Cronin. He did Ghost Train, The Hole in the Ground.
Oh, that was really good. Yeah, I like The Hole in the Ground. I knew it was something that was kind of modest, but really good. Yeah, Hole in the Ground was a good movie. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he's, well, I'm optimistic they can do something really good with it.
Me too. Yeah, let's hope it's kind of along the same kind of lines as the last remake with a bit of luck.
Yeah, that was grand. I really liked the last one.
Anywho, on to what more other stuff that I've seen. I've seen one that I've been meaning to watch for a long time, and you've told me to watch for ages, and I finally watched it this afternoon. It was The Invisible Man.
Yes, excellent. How'd you get on? How'd you think?
It was great. To be fair, though, I was slightly disappointed that they did give a massive bit of it away in the trailer.
Oh, the trailers are wank, aren't they? Which bit do they give away in the trailer?
The bit where she's up the ladder and throws the paint.
That's one of the best things. Yeah, that's such a shock.
That is the best thing in it, but I was expecting there to be more stuff like that because I'd seen that bit in the trailer. I was like, oh, this is going to be like really creepy, but that was kind of the creepiest bit about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved the ending.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah.
I did love the ending. That was great, and I love Elizabeth Moth. She's great. Oh, I always want to call her. I always want to call her Moth, Elizabeth Moth.
Ah, Elizabeth Moth, the winged actress,
Yeah.
always around when the lights go on at night. Bloody hell, where'd she go the rest of the time?
Just hovering around.
You put that tiny bathroom light on, and she's there
Yep,
in your
she's
bathroom.
there.
Oh, God's
Yep.
sake, Elizabeth!
Elizabeth,
Not again.
go
This is getting
to
ridiculous.
another great movie.
Filing another lawsuit. This is outrageous.
Bloody Elizabeth Moth.
So,
Sorry, Elizabeth Moss. I apologise.
if she is listening, this is probably the most offensive episode of anything in history. Fucking Elizabeth Moth.
Well, let's hope she really likes moths.
Yeah. I have a thing. I'm quite spooked. I'm freaked out by moths. I've seen them close up. This is
creepy.
This is probably a totally irrelevant story. In fact, it definitely is. But I've been scarred because I remember this. This sounds like I made it up, but it's true. I got extremely drunk at someone's house. That narrows it down. Many years ago, and it was one of those things which I don't do anymore because I always know my cutoff. I think I always know my cutoff these days. So at a certain stage, I'll be like, Stephen, restrain yourself because you're going to be very ill. But instead,
the might happen again. Yeah.
Back then, and I clearly just passed out with my mouth open. But beforehand, the only thing I remembered about the night, apart from obviously drinking ridiculously and stuff, was looking up at the ceiling above and seeing a huge, massive moth on the ceiling. And had I been sober, I'd have been freaked out because I was drunk. It's a massive moth of the kind I would normally be terrified about, but I'm off to sleep, stroke, passing out. And the next morning, extremely ill and quite quickly vomited into a bucket or whatever it was. And who should I see in the bucket but that giant moth from the ceiling? Clearly doing some kind of last minute backstroke or something, probably dead, I imagine. So yes, yeah, there we go. That's a cautionary tale.
Just feel how the poor moth probably felt. Yeah.
So yeah, my grudge against moths probably extended before that, but yeah, they're bastards. Elizabeth Moth, though, she's a very good actress.
She's great. She's great.
And it's a very serious film, isn't it? Despite us, with the moth thing changes it, but yeah, it's because it's because if you're going to do the Invisible Man, not literally do him, because obviously it'd be an awkward session. But yeah, if you're going to remake The Invisible Man again, because it's been done so many times, then yeah, do something interesting with it. And she's obviously an incredibly good actress. I haven't seen The Handmaid's Tale, but apparently she's great in it, as you'd expect.
She is great in that. Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Yeah, hats off to her. And she's got a tough role in this. I mean, a lot of it's her on her own, or not really, because he's invisible. And also she's the victim of domestic abuse. But yeah, I totally agree.
And she's going completely nuts because no one's believing her. And
Yes, which is which works really well because the whole thing becomes this kind of, not even a metaphor for what she's going through, because obviously one of the battles of someone, even without an invisible man in the picture, is convincing people that this extremely rich and respected guy is a wife-beating bastard. But yeah, it's a shame. I don't remember, because I think I saw it in the cinema, and I guess I maybe didn't see the trailer, because there were two fantastic shock moments for me. One was the bit on the ladder, which was so impressive in the cinema, and the second one was the great bit in the restaurant with her sister. Who is it?
It's her sister. Yeah,
and it comes out of the blue.
Whoa!
And it's so well done. And Lee Whannell is a great director.
He's great,
because he did this and Upgrade, were kind of his post-Saw movies that he made, and he's clearly very, very good. And I think he's in charge. I may be wrong, but I think he's doing the Wolfman remake with Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling's definitely attached, and I seem to think he's involved as well, because the idea was, after the rubbish Tom Cruise Mummy turns out didn't really make much money, Universal, because it was shit. Universal scrapped. Exactly. Oh, it was embarrassing. Oh, who's turned up? It's Russell Crowe as Dr. Henry Jekyll. I wonder if this is maybe going to be a spin-off film for something else with Dr. Jekyll, because otherwise he has no actual reason for being in this film.
Yeah.
Why has he got a weird accent? Russell Crowe.
Yeah. But yeah, they're just going to sweep that under the carpet and go with the Wolfman.
Yeah, I think what's happened is they failed with the Mummy, because they were going to do these big budget things with loads of special effects. Turns out it didn't really please anyone. But the Invisible Man, which was a small budget version of kind of Universal's big monsters from the olden days, did super well. And I think they're taking a similar approach to the Wolfman in terms of it being pretty stripped down, as much of a drama as a horror film kind of thing. So that could really work, I think.
That'd be good to see. Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, it can't be worse than The Mummy, so.
Oh, yeah, The Mummy was terrible. But yeah, glad you like The Invisible Man. That's, yeah.
Yay. Yeah, something I've been meaning to watch for a long, long time. And yeah, that was on Netflix as well. So
nice.
Thank you, Netflix. Well done.
Good old Netflix. Jolly good show.
I have one final one that I had a friend copy for me because I don't actually think it actually appeared over here in the UK after all. But a while ago, I heard rumours that they were making a Day of the Dead series. And it was supposed to be being shown on the Sci-Fi Channel. I never found it over here, even when they said it was going on. But luckily, a friend of mine managed to find it for me, and I sat and watched it. And it wasn't as bad as everyone's saying. It did have some awkward moments because they do. You kind of hope that maybe it's just a series in just the wording. Really, you'd hope they wouldn't try to be like Day of the Dead, but annoyingly and unfortunately, they do try and squeeze a few bits in there. You do have a bub character who's a policeman that's been zombified, and he kind of like dresses up in a workman's shirt that has the word Bob written on it in massive letters, so you know who he's supposed to be. Little annoying things like that. And they have a scientist / doctor called Dr. Logan, who they call Frankenstein. There's a Rhodes. I think that's about it. There isn't a Steel or anything that turned up, but you're getting these kind of characters pop up, and you're just like, oh, it's a little bit cringy. But that's kind of the similarities to Day of the Dead, because it's set in a little town, and they kind of uncover this dead body, and there's something in the water as well that's bringing the dead back to life. And some scenes are really comical. The zombies are really, really good. They're good old-fashioned shuffling, slow zombies. If they had a bigger budget, they definitely could have looked just like the walkers in The Walking Dead or something.
Sure.
They're along those kind of lines. Lots of cool masks and decomposition, people digging themselves out of graves, like it used to be back in the good old days with the 80s style and stuff. That was really cool. And I didn't actually mind the characters. There is quite a few young characters, a couple of young lads that are like in their I don't know, 18, 19, something like that. They were really cool, and nothing to do with, they weren't trying to squeeze them into the Day of the Dead plan or anything.
Sure.
But yeah, I thought it was quite a laugh. It was trying to be more like Z Nation than it is Walking Dead. Just kind of like missed the mark on their Day of the Dead tributes. I think it was a little bit too tacky and a little bit too cheesy in places, a little bit too trying, too hard.
Yeah.
To bring back Day of the Dead when they didn't need to. But the zombies were cool.
Well, that's cool. Who made this? Who's where is this?
The directors. I've got nobody that I actually know the name of. We've got a couple of female directors, Jackie Gould and Jem Garrard, and Stephen Kontansky. No, sorry, hang on. I'll say that again. Kostansky.
Is it a? Is it like a sci-fi show? Oh yeah, okay. Because they made Z Nation, is that right? Or was that somebody else?
That's different kind of guys that did Z Nation. I don't recognise any of the names of this. Nothing to do with Z Nation, but it just reminds me of that kind of comical version of the zombie apocalypse.
Sure. Yeah, well, that sounds okay. Because there's, I don't know, I haven't watched. I know I watched Day of the Dead 2, or I think I watched the remake as well. There's one with Ving Rhames, isn't there?
Yeah, I quite like that one.
Yeah.
It has moments.
And is it Mina Savari that's in that one as well? But that must be the or the one that's just called Day of the Dead. And then Day of the Dead Contagion, I think, is the one at Fright Fest. They showed at Fright Fest one year, and it was a bit of a hoot. It was a bit silly.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dodgy one. And then there was, oh God, what do they call it?
Oh, yeah, there was another one, wasn't there?
With that really scary guy. who was trying to be Bub, but they called him Max or something.
Yeah,
Bloodlines.
I may have watched.
Day
I think I have watched that.
Bloodlines.
Yeah.
He's creepy. He's creepy in a bad way.
It's hard to keep track, but yeah, I think the only one I remember with some kind of clarity is the Ving Rhames and Mina Savari and yeah. They carry on. It's just endless, isn't it? An industry of
it is
Romero. Stuff.
It's endless and it's silly. But actually, this one I didn't hate it at all. I thought it was kind of fun. It was quirky, and there's some good gore. There's some really cool bits of zombie kills and people getting eaten by zombies and stuff. It's really cool. There's kind of a like Return of the Living Dead style to it as well in some ways.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, yeah, that sounds all right.
Yeah, I blitzed that quicker than I did All of Us Are Dead. But the episodes weren't as long. I suppose the episodes were about 35, 40 minutes.
Oh, that's quite reasonable, isn't it? That's a fairly snappy. Yeah. There's a few things I'm quite interested in, but I haven't got around to watching it. I know there's, I've got it recorded, if you still say recorded for stuff these days, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, that's all right. On videotape. I've got, I think it's already on episode 8 or something, but the Clarice series is on TV, the spin-off from Silence of the Lambs.
Okay.
And I'm quite interested in watching that, but I haven't got around to starting it. I haven't quite finished off Chucky, but I think I've got 2 left. That was something I was enjoying. Chucky's really good. There's something called Yellow Jackets, which has got Christina Ricci and Juliette Lewis and a bunch of other people in it, which is another horror thing. There's so many, and I still haven't watched the slasher. Is it 1984 of American Horror Story?
Oh yeah. Maybe save that one for a rainy day.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing.
It's fun.
Yeah, there's so much content. It's just I just can't keep up with it. Yeah. Anything else on your recently seen, Sarah?
No, that is it for me. I am done with that.
That's cool. I haven't watched a huge amount, or if I have, I've forgotten a lot of it anyway because it's been a while. I've been rewatching a few like gems from the past, like just briefly. I rewatched Legend last week, which is fantastic. It's got a very nice. If you're in the UK, there's a very nice looking kind of, I guess, newly spruced up HD version of it on Sky, and it's also on Prime. If you have Prime, it's on there for free. There's 2 versions of it, and I never really realised until I was much older because I don't always ever watched the version that's the most common one. There is a longer one, which I think is Ridley Scott's director's cut, which also has a different score. It has a score by Tangerine Dream, and the one that I watched the other day has a score by Jerry Goldsmith. But either way, I mean, I was always quite a fan of Tangerine Dream and that kind of synthy 80s stuff. And the Jerry Goldsmith score is quite beautiful and lush and everything. But either way, I mean, the movie's still great. Amazing stuff like the makeup on, is it Meg Mucklebones? The hideous witchy character. And of course, Tim Curry's Devil is an incredible piece of makeup and indeed acting. I thought it was really lovely. Just one of the best of those, all of that really good run of 80s fantasy stuff, which always loops together in my head, like even things like The Never-Ending Story and Lady Hawk, and there's loads of them.
Labyrinth and stuff like that.
Dark Crystal.
Yeah, exactly. See, Legend kind of passed me by, to be fair. That was one of the last ones I watched because I was so obsessed as a kid with Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and stuff. I kind of didn't really give it the time of day until I was a little bit older.
Yes.
And then I eventually watched now, and oh my God, it's got unicorns in it.
It does, yeah.
I love unicorns.
And it's strange looking back at it because I hadn't really remembered it this way, but it's a lot more serious. It's a lot darker than any of those other ones we've mentioned. It hasn't really, I suppose there's a little bit of humor in it, but it doesn't have the kind of knockabout, almost, I suppose Labyrinth goes a bit Monty Python at times, doesn't it? Labyrinth is very kind of but this is pretty serious, and it's more, there's more dark in it than there is light. You do get the lovely stuff in the daylight with the unicorns, but there's a lot of kind of in the dungeon with Satan stuff as well. So it's on the darker end of those things, but still really good. So really enjoyed watching that. I've watched a few things on Netflix. I suppose I watched something called The Block Island Sound, which is this little horror movie, sort of horror movie. I suppose it's maybe what I liked about it is it's closer to something like an early X-Files episode than anything really. Really nice setting, like set on the coast somewhere. I think it's the coast of Block Island. I think that's where the title comes from, and it's about like this. He's not a very sympathetic leading character, but he comes back home. He's got a dad that's acting really strange. There's like thousands of tons of dead fish washing up. Birds are dropping dead from the sky. So it has the sense of something massive going on, but it's a pretty quiet film, and it doesn't really go for big jump scares, but there's a real sense of dread, which is what I always quite liked. And you're not quite sure if it's something extraterrestrial at work or if it's some kind of ecological disaster that's unfolding. But stuff happens quite slowly, but it does have that sense of real menace, which I really liked, and that reminded me of X-Files in its, I suppose, seriousness and the tension of it. But yeah, really good kind of independent horror film, which I guess Netflix picked up at some stage. Worth a look if you like that kind of quiet horror, I suppose.
Nice.
For the Sake of Vicious, Sarah, is a really good film. That's another one, which is on Shudder. Yes.
Hey, back to Shudder! Hooray! We miss you. I miss you.
Oh, dear old Shudder. They do have some good stuff, and For the Sake of Vicious, it's really good. Like Canadian balls to the wall, set in one night, kind of thriller horror with some proper blimey governor gore in it.
Nice.
And the main character's worth rooting for. You know that she's like a nurse. She basically gets home. She's overworked. She gets home on Halloween night, and there's a guy in there who has captured another guy. So there's this what seems to be a total stranger in her house, and he's got another guy tied to a chair. And he's saying that the guy he's got tied to a chair is the guy that raped his daughter, his child, a few years ago. And the guy that he's got kidnapped and tied to a chair and that he's torturing happens to be her landlord, who is saying he's innocent. You know, he's saying the fingerprint found at the house incriminating him, which is the only evidence, was because, well, hey, he's the landlord, so his fingerprints would be in the house because he owned that house and he had to come in there for whatever. So you're never quite sure whether the guy that's doing the torturing is totally bonkers in his grief and has got the wrong man, or if the guy really is the right man. But all, you know, and it would be foolish to give stuff away because it kind of keeps going and going, and other characters come into it, and there's hammers and crowbars and stuff and things, and there's an astonishing couple of gore moments which are proper cringeworthy, and it never lets up. But yeah, I think you'll like For the Sake of Vicious. It's really, really good. And that's a Shudder joint, that one. Otherwise, I've been watching some true crime stuff. I became obsessed again with the Yorkshire Ripper and read a book about it, and I've been watching the Netflix documentary about him, which is also very disturbing. And I think that's why, after 2 weeks of reading the Yorkshire Ripper book and watching the documentaries, I decided to watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh my god, I watched that for ages.
Well, here's the thing.
That's not the new one, is it? There is another one out, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, here's the thing. The new one is like on Sky and stuff, and I haven't seen it yet. But I thought, I'm gonna make this a family watch and get the family to watch all of them, and then it can be a refresh for me as well before the new one. And so Bogus Journey is next. But yeah, it was a delight. It was a true delight watching the original late 80s young Alex Winter, Keanu Reeves. Great fun.
Yay!
I'd forgotten a lot of it. I'd forgotten that what's her name, Jane Wielden, who used to be in the Go-Go's with Belinda Carlisle. She plays Joan of Arc. I'd forgotten that. You know, George Carlin is in it. Everybody looks so young, and the soundtrack's fantastic. And the jokes, the jokes are fun. It's not like thigh-slappingly hilarious or best film ever.
No, but it's still it's just silly. Yeah, I always remember Socrates.
Socrates is there. Yeah.
Socrates.
Freud is there. Abraham Lincoln is another one they drag out. It's terrific. I always like Alex Winter. Obviously, Keanu is fabulous and totally deserves the fine career he's had. But Alex Winter is really good. If you ever see him in interviews for stuff, he's great value. And a big horror fan like as well.
Guy. Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's good value if you ever get watch a DVD extra and he's in the film and they interview him. He's he's a great guy to have in there. But yeah, so I was driven to lovely escapism after getting quite disturbed by stuff. But yeah, as you do, that's why this stuff is there. So yeah,
Yes, what it's
Bogus
there
Journey's
for.
next,
Great.
which is
Excellent.
great. Exactly.
That's cool.
Otherwise, yeah, I haven't watched it. The new Spider-Man movie is great. I know that's totally unrelated to anything horror, but I saw that at the cinema before Christmas, I guess. That's become huge.
It's not another, is it a Sam Raimi?
No, not quite.
No?
Not
No
quite.
Bruce?
No Bruce. However, the great news is, Sarah, one is that this Spider-Man movie was fantastic. But we're way past the Sam Raimi kind of Spider-Man era in a way, because turns out the next Doctor Strange movie, which is horror oriented and is Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, is directed by Sam Raimi.
Yes, I have heard these rumors. It looks
fantastic, and it's out in May. It's out very soon.
And does it have Bruce in it?
I'm assuming so. Yeah, it would be strange.
He'll pop up somewhere, surely.
Yeah, because he was in every single one of Sam Raimi's 3 Spider-Man movies in one way or another.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm guessing so, and it's going to be. Well, it's been a while since the Sam Raimi movie. I always liked Drag Me to Hell, and I never saw his Wizard of Oz thing. I wasn't sure about that. I didn't know if that looked very interesting, but yeah, it's good to have him back.
Sure is.
We'll be discussing that later, no doubt.
Yeah.
But that's kind of it for recently seen, I think. We'll do better this month. We'll have loads for you next month, maybe. Who knows? We're going to go on to our main feature. So, as mentioned, we're going to be possibly spoiling all 5 of the Scream films, but it will be fairly obvious when we go on to the most recent one, because we'll say it's Scream 5. But yeah, we're going to revisit the Scream movies like it's 1999-ish, or 96, I guess, the original. Which is quite fun, and I think the age of them now is quite interesting. The new one kind of just missed the 25th anniversary of the original, which came out in 96 or late 96 in the US. I don't know about you, but when the first Scream came out, I was literally, I know that word's overused a lot, but I was literally 18, and it wasn't 18. I saw it in, I saw it like early 1997. When it came to the UK. Did you see it at the cinema, or how did you first watch it?
I didn't, because for starters, I wasn't old enough.
Oh, Christ.
I was only just like 17. So I couldn't get in. So no, I didn't watch it at the cinema. I definitely think I watched it around a friend's, for sure, when it came out.
Nice. Because you were still, I know you had a busy 90s with gigs and stuff, but you were still obviously like a proper horror fan, or at least becoming one, right?
Sure, for sure. But I was more interested in your kind of like zombie stuff than I was in the slashers, to be fair.
Sure.
I watched Scream. I remember watching it, and I remember just thinking, yeah, okay.
Interesting.
And not really taking a lot of it in, apart from the obvious things. So, the whole Drew Barrymore thing at the beginning. And then the phone calls, the mask is something that you always remember, and then the ending. But I don't think I remembered all of the ending, because I remember watching it again later and going, oh, what? There was 2 of them? So that's how much attention I paid to the first one when it first came out. Not a lot.
Yeah, wow. That's interesting.
But I guess it was different for you, because you're quite a big fan of this, aren't you? You've written books on this and everything.
It was quite different for me, because I was a big fan, of horror for years and years, but slasher movies were a big thing for me. So I was lucky because my parents let me get all these nasty, gory video rentals from a very young age, and they watched them with me. This wasn't like they locked me in the room, say, enjoy, see you later, we're off out to the pub. They watched, because my dad talks like that. They watched it with me. Which was cool. And my mum was probably like every other mum that I've checked with other horror fans. She was fine with me watching gore and stuff, but if something slightly rude and involved nudity came on the screen, she was slightly tense. And then it was, oh, phew, that's over. And then back to the beheadings, and she was fine. Which I kind of get. And I didn't really get that until I became a dad myself. And violence and gore and stuff I'm not bothered, to be honest, if my daughter watches that. But the other stuff is a little harder to explain. It's easy to explain Pennywise the clown as a guy in makeup, but less so if Pennywise has got a massive boner. Yes. Anyway, moving away from erections. So I was a big slasher fan, particularly of the movies that are referenced a lot in Scream, the original and the sequels. Friday the 13th was big. Halloween movies were big. And in the 90s, they'd kind of dried up, obviously. So Jason Goes to Hell was sort of the end for a while for him. And Halloween 6 had come out around 95, I think. And it wasn't desperately good. It's the one with Paul Rudd and Donald Pleasance kind of on his deathbed. And, it all felt a bit desperate. Michael Myers linked to the Druids for some reason. And this comes out and it's, massively hyped. And it's in the days when films took a while to get to the UK from the US. So it came out in December 96 in the US, April-ish in the UK. So a big gap. Luckily, no proper internet, as the movie kind of shows. No proper internet for people to already spoil it. So you just kind of knew that hype through magazines and things like that in those days. And I suppose mentions on TV film shows. So the trailer was quite clever. The trailer was a big appetite whetter, and it does quite clever things, which, as you've mentioned with Invisible Man, you get a lot of really spoilery trailers now. But the trailer for Scream kind of gives you the real gist, but it also quite cleverly shows quite a lot of Drew Barrymore. So you could be forgiven in the way it's cut that Drew Barrymore is actually going to be a big part of this film rather than just oft in the first 12 minutes. So I thought that was a nice touch. Plus, she was probably the biggest name in the cast. It was a big thing, and watching in the cinema was great. It was maybe hyped to the point where nothing could live up to the expectation of watching it in the cinema, because you're like, wow, this is the best horror film of all time. This is reviving the horror genre. This is, and I don't think it did revive the horror genre. I think it got a lot of people in, and it led to a few slasher films that did less well. But it really
tried to remind people of it again, didn't it?
Yeah,
because it makes so many references to other films. It does have the psycho scene in it, doesn't it? The shower scene. Or am I thinking of two?
There's this kind of spoof shower scene in the second one where Stab. There's a scene in Stab.
That's it. Getting ahead of myself. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. But it's all indebted, as you said, to Psycho. It's Halloween is playing in the film itself on TV. Which is
references to other horror movies in the first 12 minutes with Drew Barrymore. What's your favourite scary movie? Which is a line that pretty much follows all of the Scream films.
Yeah, that's right. And the first scene, I think, which was particularly good. The interesting thing I think about that first scene, which is only like 12 minutes, is that after that, nothing was as intense in the Scream films as that first scene. I don't think they ever went as frightening and intense as that scene really is, or was definitely in the cinema for that first time, because it's pretty ruthless. I mean, she's quite a well-known actress, and she's put through a real ordeal. And I think one of the most heartbreaking moments in a slasher film is the fact that her parents are on the end of the phone and she can't scream because she's kind of being throttled a little bit, or she lost her voice. And they're hearing her die on the garden as she's dragged away, which is kind of extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great scene. I think it's a shame that maybe they never went quite as ruthless as that sequence. Definitely not in Scream 3 and 4, which are very kind of lightweight. But yeah, it's an amazing sequence. It's the best scene in the film. And like you said, it has all the trivia stuff. So it's saying, oh yeah, hey, we know loads of horror films have come before this one, and in fact we're basing the whole premise on that. And she gets tricked by forgetting that the killer in the first Friday the 13th is Mrs. Voorhees and not Jason, which was a common misconception or mismemory from people watching these things. So yeah, it's a great sequence. And the movie itself, I watched it a week or so ago. I've watched it a lot of times over the years. It was a big thing on video. I think it holds up well. I mean, have you watched it many times?
I have. Well, yeah, I suppose I have for slashers, because they're not ones that I revisit that often. So I probably have watched it about 5 or 6 times now. Yeah, which I think is a fair enough amount.
Sure. Yeah.
And since I borrowed them off you again to rewatch, I popped into a charity shop the other day and found the first 3 Scream movies in a little box set for £2.25. So I was like, yeah, I'll have that.
They're giving them away. That's shocking, isn't it? Do you know?
It is fun to watch. I mean, I forgot how much fun it is to watch, because you do only remember certain bits about it, and then you think, oh yeah, I remember it all now. And then as it goes along, you're like, oh crap, yeah, I forgot about that bit. And the whole, there's just the cute little love story between Dewey, who everybody loves.
Yeah.
Don't they? It's not just me.
No, it's
everyone loves Dewey.
Yeah, I think so. When I rewatched these, and I think I always thought this, but when I rewatched these, I thought actually, from the start, this is actually a really nice, out of all of them, or the main ones, this is a really nice comic kind of turn from David Arquette. He's played for laughs, but as the series goes on, especially, there's more depth, and it's just a really nice performance, I think.
Sure.
I think he makes these movies. He's a big part of the success of these movies in terms of how well they hold up. It's I mean, it's a big cast for the time in terms of TV stars. Like Nev Campbell was a TV star from Party of Five. Is that the one, or was it the other one?
No, I think it was Party of Five.
Yes. Yeah. Courtney Cox was from Friends, and as the films go on, there's a bunch of Friends jokes in the second one. Which I think these movies now have an extra charm, because now they're kind of considered, scary as it is, quite old movies now. But it is fun to see the references. Like the first one has references to things like Ricky Lake, who was a big TV star then, the Richard Gere gerbil story. Being a Richard Gere fan, of course, I still must insist that story was completely made up, and there's no way that he was checked into an LA hospital with a gerbil up his arse. There's a soundtrack by Republica, and Nick Cave, of course. The Red Right Hand became a kind of theme song for the series.
Yep. And then they decided to steal it for Peaky Blinders.
Oh, I haven't watched that. I didn't know.
Yeah, they totally steal it, and you're like, what the fuck? This is Scream.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It really. I'm guessing a lot of people watched these hadn't heard of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds at the time.
But I guess not.
It would have given a big boost to them. And it's long. The thing about all of these films, they're all pushing 2 hours, and a couple of them.
You don't notice it. I feel like you don't notice it.
I think in the second one, well, the third one especially.
Maybe, yeah.
I think the second one felt a little overstretched, which we'll come to. This one, there's a sense at times, well, it could have been tighter, but as it goes on, maybe it feels overstretched. But yeah, this works. I think this moves along nicely. It's certainly got some nice intros for the characters. Randy, of course, the horror geek.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a latest. There's a lot of horror geeks in 80s horror films. Things like the Monster Squad, and there's a great horror geek character in Salem's Lot, of course. So it's the latest in a long line of the characters. A character in the film is a tad like some of the people that are watching the film. So that's another layer of that. And of course, he's the driving force of all the references. What do you think of the leads? How do you feel about old Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox?
Yeah, interesting. I think Sydney comes across. I mean, she is badass by the end of every single one, but you kind of feel like she kind of plays on it a little bit to start off with. She's a bit pathetic. But I like the kind of rivalry she has with Courtney Cox. I love Courtney Cox's character. I know she's a cow.
Yeah.
But that is kind of the way like reporters and journalists were kind of portrayed, and sometimes still are in places, in movies and stuff, as just out for a story and stuff like that. Whereas, the whole thing started from Nev Campbell's mother, or Sidney Prescott's mother, dying and stuff, and that's where this whole thing started. So Courtney is basically following up on the story, which is just blowing up around her, and she's kind of in the middle of it. So why shouldn't she have the rights and write a book about it and stuff like that?
Yeah,
I think they both played really well. I mean, like you say, Courtney Cox was like a big character in Friends and stuff, and you kind of can't get that little bit out of your head. But she does manage to like pull off a kind of bitchy, bossy character quite well. I don't really watch Friends all that much to know what her character was like in that, but I think she did well in the Scream movies. And I love the fact that everyone's still in it all the way through. They always have the same characters,
which is unique. Possibly the only thing that is truly unique in the whole series is that this became a kind of more like a TV series in the form of films than anything, because it's the recurring characters, which has never really happened. They do bring them back a lot in some slasher films. Thankfully, not Tommy Jarvis in the later Friday the 13th movies, but and that's obviously happening a lot in things like Halloween Kills now, where almost everybody that's still alive comes back from the earlier one. But yeah, that is unusual. And indeed, the number of people that survive at the end of this one, not just the kind of core four, but also Randy survives this one, and it's a pretty low body count film actually for the slasher films it's aping. And you come to the more recent ones, and they've got massive body counts, but the first Scream is pretty low. And in fact, I believe the killing of Henry Winkler's character was inserted as an extra. Excuse me. Because they felt there was such a massive gap in terms of kills that they had to have some more horror in there, which makes sense.
Yeah, I keep forgetting he was in that. He's the head teacher.
He's very fun.
Henry Winkler. He is, yeah.
And he's part of a massive army of red herrings, really, isn't he? There's lots of knowing moments where it's suggesting he might be the killer.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, just had a cough there. Including moments where he's, he slags off the entire generation as desensitized shit, which is a very slasher movie, older character to say the teacher or the disapproving parent, with a grudge against the youth. So I quite like that. The red herrings of things like her dad's out of town is a massive red herring. He's mentioned constantly. You see him very briefly at the start.
Yeah.
So he's a massive red herring. Although I don't know if you found this, but when you rewatch it, it's entirely clear on screen, and probably deliberately to throw you off, but it's always clear from the very start that it had to be Stu, and it probably had to be Billy as well.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Scream movies. They put the obvious ones like right in your face and just dangle it there, just so you have a slight inkling, and then is it though? And then they're like, here it is.
Yeah, and they do some quite cool things with Billy's character.
Very clever. Yeah, I like Billy. It's annoying. I know he's turns out to be the murderer, but I actually quite liked Billy and Stu as well. But the funny thing is the way they always just turn nuts at the end.
Yes,
they've held it together all the way through, and just can't control themselves for the last bit.
Yeah, which is a long scene, isn't it? Which I think, because this is strange to think of it now, because it seems so tame compared to what came after this, when we had the Saw movies and even the new Scream movie, which is very graphic compared to this. But this was pretty controversial. It was cut by the MPAA in America, so the rest of the world only ever got a cut version. And the scene, I think, that kind of made people uncomfortable, at least as far as the guardians of the keys to the films that censor films, was that long scene in the kitchen of two young men kind of stabbing each other because they've totally lost it. And it's not very graphic, but it does go on for a very long time, to the point where it becomes quite uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite interesting. But it's all quite cleverly telegraphed. There's a clever moment where, as a joke, Randy says to one of them, "I'll see you in the kitchen with a knife." And of course, at the end, that's exactly what happens. So it's a quite cleverly constructed script. But yeah, I do think it holds up.
It sure does.
And of course, it has did you catch the weird, ancient kind of early form of communication on a computer that Sydney uses to try and say there's an emergency? This is bizarre. This may take some time. And of course, Billy is suspected of being a killer simply because he carries a cellular phone.
Yeah.
Which is another thing.
It's suspicious in those days.
It was, yeah, not many of them around. So yeah, no, I think it holds up. It was the first to revive the slasher genre, and very quickly though everything kind of turned around really fast. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scream 2 were pretty much out the next year, so they cashed in mighty quick. Yeah, and also I quite like them in all of them. I think the new one as well, but it has picture credits at the end with a shot of each character smiling at the camera or smiling from an earlier scene, just like a sitcom. Which
it's a very 90s sitcom thing to do.
Very, yeah, they don't do that anymore. A lot of shows don't have title sequences, do they? It's quite different now. Oh yeah, oh the memories. You don't even get that blue screen on your TV when you've paused a film these days, like there is at the start with old Drew Barrymore. Yeah. And of course, it was Wes. Like Wes Craven directed the first 4 Scream movies, and he'd already been there with this kind of self-referential stuff with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, of course, which came out a couple of years before, and interestingly was a total failure as far as box office goes. Yeah. So Scream, Sarah. So Scream 2. Scream made a massive amount of money in a particularly unusual word of mouth kind of way over a period of time, which is quite cool, which showed, I think, how it sunk in and people were telling people about it. But Scream 2 came a year-ish later. And what's your thoughts on Scream 2?
Scream 2 is like completely nuts. It's hilarious because it doesn't take itself seriously at all. I love the idea that they've taken the idea of Scream and turned it into a movie within a movie. Sure. So Gail's written her book, and they've now turned the story of the Woodsboro killings, like Billy and Stu and stuff. It's all been turned into another movie which they call Stab. I'm correct in that, aren't I? It's called Stab.
Yeah, Stab. Yeah.
Yep. So basically, Scream 2 turns out to be more of a copycat type thing because Stab the movie is out and everybody is like crazy over Ghostface, and it's been a couple of years since the first killings and things start happening in Woodsboro again, so they believe it to be a copycat because of the movies. And the way it starts off is crazy. I mean, Stephen, would you want to go and see a film in 90s America in a cinema after watching the beginning of Scream 2?
No way. That's my worst nightmare in a very different way.
How can you watch a film when everyone's jumping around, screaming, and waving knives around and stuff like that? It's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, that's that totally, because I always consider that a cinema should be like a church where everybody shuts the fuck up for 2 hours and
I know, right? Exactly.
Sucks their popcorn.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's horrible, just horrible.
Anyone so much as whispers, I like glare at them across the cinema.
Yeah, me too. And possibly...
carry on.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, and it's possibly, I don't know, there are points in these films where I think this anyway, but it's a possibly dim view of horror fans that they've portrayed opening night for a horror film as being full of total nutcases that don't even notice someone's really being stabbed to death in front
of them at the cinema, right in front of the screen.
Although it does nod back. I don't know if you remember this because we did this for the Freddy show last year. It does nod back to that scene in Wes Craven's New Nightmare where Robert Englund's on a chat show and he surprises Heather, I think, as being a surprise guest, and the audience of that show are full of people like wearing Freddy masks, going mental. Yeah. Freddy forever, Yeah. So there's a degree of that going on, which I'm not sure I'm a big fan of. But yeah, no way. I would be leaving that and watching it at home.
It is crazy. But yeah, they start off taking out people from Woodsboro at the Stab movie. And then I think it goes on to be slightly more relevant to the story. Gail comes back because of the new story happening. She kind of meets some other wannabe reporters and big fans, one of which tends to follow her around.
Oh, yeah.
Quite a bit.
Will she be relevant later?
She might be.
Who is this new character?
Who knows?
Played by Laurie Metcalf from Roseanne.
Yeah, that's where I know her from. I know her from somewhere.
Playing unhinged quite well, I think, in this. I quite like
she
Laurie
does
Metcalf.
it very well. Yeah, she is a bonkers person, isn't she? You have a little Another cameo. So we had Drew Barrymore in the first one. We have Sarah Michelle Gellar in this one, who is the Drew Barrymore character, really, isn't she? She's not in it for long, but you think she might be. You get to hear more about Cotton Weary, who was the guy that was wrongly accused of killing Sydney's mum. He gets released.
Yeah.
In the second one, doesn't he? He was actually like in jail over the first one, but they've since found out. Obviously, it wasn't him that killed her mum, so he then gets released. He comes into the film a little bit more. You have Timothy Olyphant, a very young, very handsome Timothy Olyphant.
He's great.
I love him. I absolutely love him. But yeah, he's kind of a crazy character in this one that you have to keep your eye on as well, because he might turn up at the end.
Who knows? Yeah, he's great. He's kind of a film geek character, isn't he, as well? They have that chat in the classroom.
Lots of red herrings. Yeah, lots of red herrings floating about. Sydney's new boyfriend, Derek, who is played by somebody else. Jerry O'Connell is in it.
Yeah.
Jerry. There's lots of kind of familiar faces there. Oh yeah. Seen him in something else. Seen them in something else. Yeah. Kind of stuck around to throw you off the scent and stuff.
Massively. Yeah.
Dewey and Gail do a lot more working together. I think they actually kind of eventually get it together, don't they, in Scream 2?
Yep. This is the one. Yep.
Which is cool, because you're always rooting for Dewey. Yeah, he gets the girl. Kind of cool. And then it all goes absolutely bonkers at the end. Oh, I remember there being a really cool reference to VHS as well.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a bit where Dewey and Gail are running around a media office or something, getting chased by the killer, and they're like, if only we had a VHS player lying around. You're like, yes, I've not heard that for so many years.
That's a really good scene, actually, because he ends up stabbed in the soundproof studio, which is a really
great
effective scene. Stabbed for the second time,
of course,
in the series, and still fine at the end. There's a few kind of cool technological things, and there's a great bit in the library where she's being kind of menaced by a very archaic form of instant messenger, and they remind her that all the computers in the library are connected. So it could be anyone in here. Who'd have thought that computers could be connected? There's a great bit on the campus where the cops are searching for anyone with a cell phone because they've just had a call from the killer outside where everyone's sitting. And of course, there's just a few cell phones around.
Yeah,
they actually wrestle one of the students to the ground because he's got a phone.
Up to them. Yeah. Funny.
So yeah, there's some cool stuff in this. It's the Stab movie within a film, which becomes a kind of recurring plot point in all of the next sequels, actually. Stab. And the Stab franchise that comes out of the fictional film is quite clever. Heather Graham plays the Drew Barrymore character in that scene at the start at the cinema, which is quite cool because she was, I suppose, a relatively big or at least rising star at the time as well. And the cool thing I think about Stab, although it's just an incidental detail, is when you see the clips from it that they're watching in the cinema, it's kind of, this is a Wes Craven film that we're watching, and his because Stab within the film is him kind of making a bad version of Scream. Because it has the pointless shower scene with her, but it has much more goofy versions of the bits in the Drew Barrymore scene from the first movie. So that's quite clever, even though it's just an incidental thing. Just a few seconds, they at least made a cool effort to make that fun. It's interesting. You got, I think it's Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett Smith for the couple that are killed at the start. Interestingly, talking about black characters in horror movies being disposable, or being, on a lower rung to the white ones. And later on, of course, Sydney's kind of completely cliched black roommate gets horribly killed at a certain point. So kind of setting us up for something that then actually turns out to be, well, this movie is also doing that thing too, despite the bit at the start. So I think that's kind of clever, presumably intentionally. And very 90s cast. Sarah Michelle Gellar is interesting because Buffy was starting around this time. She was a victim in I Know What You Did Last Summer, which came out very close to this one coming out. Joshua Jackson, who is a kind of small character here. He's chatting in the film class. I don't think he has another scene, but he is later in urban legend, gets strung up on a tree at the start of urban legend, which is one of my favorites of the kind of Scream slasher movies, or the slasher movies that came after this. Rebecca Gayheart is one of those bitchy teenage girls that show up, and she was the killer in urban legend. So there's all these kind of connections to the slasher movies that came after, which I think is quite cool. Lots of jokes about OJ Simpson, David Schwimmer, all those kind of friend stuff in here as well. And this is Randy's last stand, which I thought, in the cinema at least, again, not knowing what's going to happen, I thought the killing of Randy in daylight halfway through the film was quite a nice touch. Quite a shockingly done scene. But yeah. It's good. David Warner has a cameo as Sydney's drama teacher, who of course is a horror legend thanks to The Omen and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a fun sequel. It's a little long. I think there's a whole sequence of Sydney's play, the kind of Cassandra of Troy thing, which seems to go on forever.
Yeah, and that
highly
is
pointless.
kind of that is the kind of thing that you're kind of a bit like, oh, really? It's not so great. You know, why would Sydney volunteer to be the main character in that play after going through what she's been through those whole few years beforehand? Why would she voluntarily stand there and go, oh yeah, I'll have all these random people in masks come dancing around me? That won't trigger anything at all.
It makes no sense. It holds the film up, because the film is 2 hours. I think this is the longest of the 5, and it feels kind of baggy, especially in those scenes.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, there's some great individual scenes in there. I think the opening's really effective, as you said, in the cinema. There's a great suspense bit in the police car where Sydney and her roommate have to climb over the possibly unconscious ghost face, who you don't know who it is at that stage, and go out the window.
You're willing them to take the mask off.
Yes, and probably the gruesomest thing in this is the cop whose face has got squished through the windscreen. Is also, I think, quite a nice bit of gory stuff going on. The finale is quite good. I mean, it's possibly pushing it to have 2 killers again working in tandem.
Yeah, and going a bit Friday the 13th.
And it does exactly the same stuff as before. You know, they get the chance to explain in great detail why they're doing it. One of them comes back from the dead at the point where you're waiting for one of them to come back from the dead. And it turns out Laurie Metcalf is Billy's mum, and Mickey is kind of the Timothy Olyphant character is just a kind of nutcase that tagged along, really, isn't he? He's
just wanted to be involved. Another one of those kind of horror geek characters that wants to be part of a horror story in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he wants to be a celebrity. He's got his defense sorted out already. He's going to blame the movies because he knows that will get loads of coverage. And it's quite a good twist. I think this came out after the OJ Simpson thing. So this kind of stuff was high profile, you know, the celebrity nutcase murderers who get away with it in the case of OJ Simpson. And you know, there's quite a novelty that Billy's mum and him met on the internet, which she mentions in a kind of throwaway line, or he mentions, I think. So yeah, there's some good stuff in Scream 2.
There is.
I think it's
a good one.
Yeah,
it's a good follow-up.
Yeah, the Dewey and Gale stuff works really well, I think.
Yeah,
he gets his own theme tune, which is the music from Broken Arrow, which is quite cool. This kind of nice little electric guitar riff that keeps playing at different points when he's on screen. And yeah, it's good. And it turns out Randy's favourite scary movie is Showgirls, in that one sequence where he's asked on the phone right before he's dragged into the van and killed, which was a then timely reference to a wonderful film. So yeah, Scream 2 is really good, and indeed was the best sequel for some time, because next, Sarah, in fact, a couple of years later this time, we have Scream 3.
Scream 3.
Yes, which was written and kind of promoted as the finale of the series. When it came out, so it was going to be a trilogy, and this was the end. This is where I think it kind of went wrong. I don't know if you think the same, but it certainly was a kind of tumultuous period. So the original writer, Kevin Williamson, did not write this one. And he talks about, there's a great podcast, actually, Mick Garris's podcast, Postmortem, had a really good interview with him where he was very honest about these movies, very emotional about Wes being dead. But he did a treatment for Scream 3 that was rejected. Someone else wrote this one. And it kind of shows. I don't know about you.
It definitely shows,
I think it's desperate. I kind of think this, and perhaps the next one, is a bit of a kind of like, oh, yeah, this has been ground out as a formula.
For sure. Kind of, they don't really concentrate on the characters as much. Sydney's kind of disappeared. She's trying to like lay low, isn't she? This is where she becomes, or she takes on a different name and kind of goes on to a kind of like a Samaritans type thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's kind of living as a recluse, trying to help young girls that have, all domestic abuse and all that kind of stuff. It kind of turns more into a whodunit rather than a slasher type thing, because it takes a while for the killer to actually turn up. I mean, there's some off the cuff kind of throwaway characters get taken out straight away, don't they?
Yeah, Cotton Weary is killed at the start. In the usual prologue of someone getting killed, so he's written out of it, which is a shame actually, because Liev Schreiber's a really good actor, and that character was really just there to service the red herrings, wasn't he, in the first two?
Sure.
So this one, which came out in 2000, takes place mostly on or around the set of Stab 3. So there's the link to the fictional movies and the real Scream 3, Stab 3, Return to Woodsboro.
I like that fact. I like the fact that it kind of goes along in sequence. In the first movies, Stab kind of carries on with Scream. Yeah,
there's a lot of self-referential stuff there where the people making Stab 3 in the film are going through different script versions because they're trying to keep the real ending off the internet, which by the time of 2000 was a real thing for the Scream movies too, was not getting the ending blown by people online. And you get to see, which I think is a joke that kind of gets run into the ground, but you get to see Parker Posey playing the part of Gail. So Parker Posey, in a sense, doing an impersonation of Courtney Cox playing Gail in Stab 3, which is kind of a good joke for at the start. Jenny McCarthy is an actress who moans about being 35 years old and playing a 21-year-old bimbo that's going to get bumped off, which is one of the better scenes, I think, where she hides out in a room full of props for the movie, which is full of, obviously, Ghostface costumes, which is quite well done. But a lot of it, Sydney's kind of sidelined for much of the film, and there's a fairly kind of dull backstory about her mum, which does prove relevant when you get to the twist, but doesn't really go anywhere. And it also is pretty desperate in the way it tries to come up with the idea of rules once again. So there's a kind of recorded message from Randy, obviously, who died in the second one, that is dug out. And they're talking about the rules of a trilogy, which seems really stretched because there aren't really any horror trilogies as such. There's not really established rules that anyone ever talks about for part threes in horror films, even though this tries to pretend there is. But yeah, I think it's a little bit strained, this one, despite some good moments. And it does,
it sure is.
It does kind of show. At the time, there was a lot of stuff, a lot of controversy about violence in movies. The Columbine thing had happened. And I know this film was one of the films in production or kind of development around that time. So there was a lot of pressure to tone stuff down. So that kind of shows.
That.
Yeah. It's a very dry, it's not very scary. It's certainly not very gruesome.
No. And the ending, like you say, is a bit of a total difference from the beginning of the film. There's no continuation, but you kind of have this kind of like flimsy idea that Sydney's mum was in the acting business.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
But they never really go into too much detail of that. But that's how you then kind of discover who the killer is. He turns out to
yeah. The reveal is really poor. It's her long lost brother, isn't it?
Yes.
The kind of
Who's now a
estranged.
director.
Yes, the director of Stab 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of links it to the first killers as well. Yeah, it's all very, very Scooby-Doo, but not in a good way. And yeah, I think it was clear it had run out of steam. Also, it makes a point of saying, a bit like the second one did it, of saying, oh, rules of a trilogy, anything could happen. The main characters, anybody could die at any point, and none of that really happens. Everybody you think will survives.
Survives. Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
it's always the throwaway characters that you're like, oh yeah, he's going to die, that dies.
yeah. So whereas I
Yeah.
think the first one was genuinely unpredictable, and the second one as
Yeah.
well, by killing off Randy halfway through.
Mm.
Yeah, this one was totally about ticking the box, and yeah, it's a
Yeah, they
little
seem a little
dull.
bit. Yeah, they seem a bit scared to kill off like the big names and stuff. And then
Yeah.
random people turning up. Carrie Fisher appears in it very briefly.
Yeah, Carrie Fisher. Yeah, that's right. She's on the back lot, isn't she, of the studio?
She's
Um, and
getting accused of sleeping with George Lucas.
that's right. Yeah, because the idea is that she's not playing herself, but she's just someone that
No.
happens to resemble Carrie Fisher,
Yeah.
which is quite a good joke. Um, and Silent Bob and Jay from the Clerks
Yeah.
movies are there as well, which is cool because in Jay and Silent Bob, what's that movie called? Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Yeah, I think it's that one,
Hmm.
which was made around the same time. There's a cameo from Wes Craven in that movie, and there's a bit where Jay and Silent Bob run onto the set of the latest Scream movie where the killer is unmasked as a monkey. So they've really run out of ideas. That was the joke, which actually is probably a more convincing ending than Scream Three's real ending. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's cool to see all those kind of late '90s things, the Kevin Smith references and stuff. But it's it's
Sure.
a bit of a shame. It was always a bit of a disappointing one because it was built up to be the big finale. Not so much.
No.
Nice.
But
But of
then
course, yes, sir. A long time passes.
a long
Different
time.
different trends come and go. Horror goes through quite quickly. Actually, it was already the end of the slasher thing by Scream 3 anyway, because things like Blair Witch were coming out in '99,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Found
the
footage was taken
found
over.
footage, yeah, the supernatural stuff, The Ring, the Japanese remakes that were coming out, and then the kind of harder edge stuff like Saw and Hostel.
Mm.
So it takes a long time. And indeed, Wes Craven makes other things, like a terrible werewolf movie called Cursed and a few other things. But Scream 4 turned out to be his last film in 2011. And the podcast I mentioned a few minutes ago is interesting because it shows how Kevin Williamson was brought back to write this one, but he talks kind of tactfully about how awful it was to
Mm.
work on it and how his script was completely rewritten, and nothing really that he intended to write for this one ended up the way it should have done on the screen, which again I think kind of shows sadly. This one was promoted with the tagline "New Decade, New Rules" because it had come out more than a decade after the last one. Although I think maybe 10 years too late, same old shit is probably more apt. What was your feelings of Scream 4 or Scree 4M? I think is how the title appears on screen with a
Is that?
4.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Scree 4.
Oh yeah. No, it's awkward. It's awkward, and you kind of think they probably should have like given up when they did with 3.
Yeah.
This is probably my least favourite
Yeah.
out of all of them. The only thing I really remember about it is Courtney Cox's haircut.
Oh, is this the really bad one? The
Yeah,
really bad haircut?
she's going for the micro fringe. I've
Oh, yeah.
like huge props to people that can like have the bravery to pull off the micro fringe. She didn't do it very well, bless her.
Yes. It's a bit of a shame, really. I mean, everyone's back, like Nev
Yep,
Campbell, Courtney Cox, David
everyone's still
Arquette.
back. Yep,
Um,
she's gone. She's come back. She's written a
yeah,
book. Sydney's written a book or a self-help
yes,
book, which is
yeah,
what's brought her back to Woodsboro.
that's right.
Just
And
as killings start happening again.
Yeah, but the other two are kind of only back because they have to be. Like Courtney Cox and David Arquette are back because, well, the plot demands them be back rather than there being any real reason. I think they kind of hastily suggest that what's her name, Gail Weathers, she's not really got as many good scoops on TV anymore, so now she's
Yeah, she's
showing
got a
up to
bright
cover the
spot.
murders. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it's a bit dull, isn't it? Because now she's kind of on really good terms, and she's not as bitchy, and she's kind of chumming up
Mm.
to Sydney. So that
Hmm.
whole thing is gone.
You kind of have the new rivalry between her and Judy, who's the
Oh
deputy, because Dewey's now like Mr. Big Sheriff guy, isn't he? And he's got
yes,
deputy. He's no longer deputy Dewey. He's Sheriff Dewey, and now he has
that's right.
this young lady deputy called Judy who makes lemon cakes, and yeah, she's not a massive fan of Gail, and Gail's not a massive fan of her. So there's this new kind of rivalry going on because Gail and Sydney are kind of getting on okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a new injection, and there's some other new characters as well. There's a strange thing, and I guess she was a star at the time because she was in Heroes. Hayden Panettiere, is that her name? The
Mm.
the blonde girl that's in this. She's I like the idea that she's a modern teenager in 2011 that owns DVDs of Don't Look Now and Suspiria, which suggests that this is an aging horror movie geek that has possibly written this script. But
Sure.
yeah, it's a kind of a grab bag of stuff. There's a Skeet Ulrich kind of inspired ex-boyfriend character in there that seems a bit of an obvious red herring.
Hmm.
Um,
Oh, there's Rory Culkin.
yeah, he's the kind of Randy character, isn't he? The kind of movie
Yeah,
geek.
yeah. Him and his mate have the little horror club going on.
Yeah. Um, there's
Emma
that.
Roberts. Uh,
Yeah. There's the others.
yeah,
Yeah. Emma Roberts. Yeah, Emma Roberts is the niece of Thingy, isn't she? The niece of Sydney.
yeah, yes,
Um,
she is.
she's in a lot of American Horror Story, isn't she? And
Yes,
things
she
like
is.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
not a
yeah.
huge fan, I have to admit, of Emma Roberts. I mean, she starts off okay, and you think so. Okay, as Emma Roberts will just scoot over this. And hopefully, she gets killed off pretty soon. But unfortunately, that's not the way that works.
No, in
And I
fact, quite the
think
opposite.
yeah, quite the opposite. Yep, because she turns out to be one of the killers. Annoyingly, Rory Culkin turns out to be one of the killers as well.
Which is so old hat. Yes, he does.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah. No, I was kind of like sad about that because yeah, he's I love him as an actor. He's been in some great stuff, but that for him, I don't know if that's one of his is that one of his earlier ones or had he been in other stuff
Mm,
before then?
I don't know. I'm not
But you
sure, to be
know,
honest.
it's definitely not his strongest character he's played. I know he can only do what he can do with the script and stuff, but it's
Yeah.
very, very predictable.
Yeah, and their motivation is very old hat. It's just a rehash of earlier
Yeah,
stuff. Like she wants to be a celebrity from
yeah,
memory, and he's just doing it for, I don't know, geek lust or whatever.
yeah, pretty
Um,
much.
so yeah, that's very tired. And the fact that there's two again, yeah, yeah. Um, it's a real shame. Yeah, I think this does a lot of things wrong. I mean, I think it's great to have everyone back, but I don't know what the point was if none of the returning characters are either going to be killed or turn out to be the killer. You know, that would be
Mm,
a decent shock maybe rather than what we get. Instead, you know, they're not in any danger. At a certain point, you realize that they're all going to be fine because the
sure.
series feels a need to keep these characters going, doesn't want to upset anyone, even though it's a horror series. And by definition, it should be doing just that. Um, yeah.
It's kind of a
Um,
lot of angry characters as well, isn't it? Because the stab movies have moved on. We're now on stab 7 or something.
Yes, yeah, because the opening sequence is that unraveling of
Films within a film within a film within a film.
yes, that's right, yeah, which kind of keeps you on your toes because it's
Yeah,
and it carries on the tradition for the series of having horror movies playing on TV sets. In the second one, it was Nosferatu. In this, Shaun of the Dead is playing on TV.
yeah,
Um, the original was Halloween. Um, and that pullback scene, which has a bunch of stars, it's got like Anna Paquin's in there and
yeah.
Kirsten Bell. Um, But what we're actually watching, instead of a setup for the film, we're actually watching scenes from Stab 6 and then Stab 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a hint, which I think is carried over in the most recent one, but there's a hint that Stab 5 was some total bollocks involving time travel. They have quite cleverly developed a backstory about the Stab films, which are
Yeah.
way ahead of this. This was only number 4.
Yeah.
They're already.
Yeah. I do like that. I like that running kind of comediness to the Stab movies.
Yeah, and the opening is maybe the best thing. Like the opening layers, where it's a kind of a double or triple fake out as to what the real opening is of the film we're actually watching, rather than the films they're watching. I think works quite well, because there's a sense of, oh whoa, I don't quite know where I am here. This is a little surprising. It had been done before. There's at least a couple, just in the same way that the cinema scene in Scream 2 is really just a redoing of things like Anguish from the 80s and a couple of others. Killer Party is this campus slasher film from the 80s, which has the same opening as Scream 4, really, because it's 3 separate. Oh no, we're watching them, watching this, including a fantastic. If you ever get a chance to watch it, it's maybe worth watching Killer Party just for the reveal that what you thought was the opening is actually a very 80s music video, with all the hair and everything. So it had been done, but I think going into this, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be cool, because all of that caught me by surprise, and I'm not quite sure where I am anymore. So that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
Because the rest is a little kind of thin. There's not really any shocks, because we kind of know that Gail Weathers, she may have been attacked, but she's going to pull through.
Sure.
It's also the smuggest of them as well. Like, I don't know if you agree, but there's in attempting to kind of talk on screen about what had happened in horror over the last 10 years, there's characters that are slagging off what they call torture porn shit, and quite richly, in a film as poor as this, quite richly saying things like Saw 4 really sucked. Well, at least it wasn't as desperate as this one, which is a real shame, because that and certain other things about it suggest that perhaps they don't have a particularly good view of horror fans in this film.
No. They do kind of take the piss, and kind of, it's slightly insulting at times. You feel a little bit like attacked occasionally.
Yeah, and which would be okay if this was a better film or a smarter film. But yeah, it's a gorier film, isn't it, than the certainly than Scream 3. It's quite a lot bloodier.
Yeah.
Although,
they're working their way up, because there isn't really an awful. I mean, there's blood in all of them, but you don't get to see it a lot. I mean, for a movie that's based solely on a killer that uses knives, you don't see an awful lot of it, especially in the first couple, at least.
Sure.
But I suppose it's getting on for 2011 now. They're like, we really must ramp this up a bit.
But things had changed, absolutely, and so this was much gorier than the others. Although the other thing that kind of ruins it for me is it is the kind of film where a guy gets stabbed in the head, but just before he dies still has time for one last kind of movie reference joke. So what's the point? If everything is a laugh, then there's no tension. Which Scream did really well, and Scream 2 did really well, but this one is I did revisit it because I was disappointed at the cinema, because it was the first one for ages. But I think it's probably one of Wes Craven's weakest films, which is a real sad shame, because it was his last film, as it turned out. But yeah, anything else to say about Scream 4 or Scream?
Not really. Just that it must have been a massive letdown having to go and watch it at the cinema, I'm sure. Having waited all that long for like 11 years. Getting like, oh yeah, I'm really excited for the new one. Scream 3 didn't really do it. Hopefully this time they've had 10 years to figure this out. They're going to make it a bit better, and then the only thing you remember is Courtney Cox's haircut.
That was one of the highlights as it turned. It was a shame. Because all these things, I was never worried about them making too many sequels. If it's good, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, even I was saying to you before we entered the show, I watched the trailer for The Lord of the Rings and on Amazon, which looks kind of ropey, but I still hope it'll be really good, because it is just a trailer. And the same for this. Scream 3 wasn't very good. but maybe this one can be better. And so, yeah, it was a bit disappointing.
Shame.
But it's a shame. And then it went away. I mean, it didn't
For a
do
long,
very
long
well.
time.
Yeah,
No,
not
can't
great.
imagine it did.
I think it was, from the sounds of it, it wasn't a great film to make in terms of what changed behind the scenes. It was the Weinsteins in those days at Miramax
Yeah.
still, before obviously at least one of them turned out to be a complete deranged pervert. So they famously intervened in films and changed stuff about. But the good news is, the bad news, of course, is Wes Craven died in between Screams. The Weinsteins are dead to us now. Miramax doesn't really exist. But the latest one came out this year, Sarah, just last month, God damn it.
It did. It bloody well did.
Can't believe it. 25 years-ish after the original.
Yep.
An all-new crew, and a very good crew too, which is good old Matt. I had to write this down. Matt Bettinelli Olpin, because he has the world's least memorable name, and Tyler Gillett, or Gillett, whichever you prefer, Tyler.
Yep.
They are mad talented, because those are the geezers that were part of the Radio Silence Collective, and their credits include the fabulous Ready or Not, and the equally great, actually, Southbound, the anthology film, which I really liked.
Bloody love that, yeah.
It's great.
And VHS.
VHS, they're the best one, the best segments of VHS. Yeah, they're really talented, and they, you know, they a different guy wrote it. James Vanderbilt wrote it, but his checked out his CV, and he wrote Zodiac, the fantastic David Fincher film from quite a lot of years ago. So this had some real talent behind it. The series has been refreshed, and this has already been a box office hit. I'm not quite sure why it's done so. I mean, it's a really good film, but maybe, just maybe, it was the right time. You know, enough time has passed for fans of the original, because they'll be there, like me and you. But a new generation who maybe have watched those older films on streaming or whatever. So there's a sense with this one that it was something special, and going into it thinking, oh, you know, it turned out to be pretty great, actually. So we both saw this at cinema, right, Sarah?
We did, yes, very recently. And yeah, we need to put out our spoiler alert warning again.
Yes.
Just in case. So if you haven't watched it, we are going to go into some details. So maybe you might want to listen to something else for a little while, or go to the cinema, watch it, and then come back and listen to the rest.
Yeah, off your trot, you know.
Off your trot. Now's a good time as any to go and do it. You know, the Jackass movie's out. Most people are going to be going to see that. That's what happened to me.
Oh, Jesus,
I got to the cinema and there was all these lads hanging around and stuff, and I was like, oh, God, please don't be there for Scream. But luckily they weren't. They were there for the Jackass movie, and there's about 9 of us watching Scream, so
I like
now's
the idea.
best time to go see it.
Wouldn't it be great if the lads stereotypically were there at the foyer setting their farts on fire, and they turned out they were actually going in for Scream as well, you know? Oh, fuck.
Damn it, no.
As they careen down the aisles in a go-kart out of control. Yes.
But yay.
Yeah, it goes to the cinema. It's ridiculous. You should go there, right? Yeah, exactly. And the air conditioning systems are really good for COVID, because they're one of the safest places you can be, in fact, I read.
Absolutely.
If you're going to be inside. Yeah, really good. So, where do you start, Sarah? Yeah, the opening's really strong. I thought, yes, the first 10 minutes or so, I thought, okay, this is a really good sign that this is going to be something quite decent.
Sure. Yeah, it starts off, because obviously, like, all the old faces are still back once again. Everyone's still there, but it takes a while to get to the old faces. You know, they kind of introduce some new faces first.
Very much, yeah. It is a while, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you get a similar scene to the first Scream, of a young girl home alone. She's kind of messaging her friend, and then Ghostface calls the landline, and she starts getting into like quite an in-depth horror conversation, isn't it?
Yeah.
About not specifically what's your favorite scary movie, but what kind of horror movie do you like?
Yeah, and it's quite affectionate, and it's because they're talking about some of the major ones like It Follows, Hereditary, and the Witch, and the Babadook. Especially the Babadook will become the source of a one-liner at the very end. And I quite like that.
She's a very, very young girl as well.
Yeah, she looks super young. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's thingy. It's yeah, I forgot the name. Sorry, whoever you
Jenna
are.
Ortega.
Oh, that's a good old Jenna. Yes, that's her, and she's rather good, and it's suspenseful, and the language of communication has changed, and it fits quite nicely because instead of you've got the messenger conversation, as you said, where suspense can be built just from those three dots when someone's typing, which is quite
Yeah,
a
yeah,
nice touch.
exactly. Taking it up
Um,
for the modern day. They've kind of got another mishmash of really good characters, but some sympathetic, some absolute assholes.
mm,
Some probably a little bit too clever for their own good. I'm talking
yeah.
about like the twins that they have in there and stuff. Who's one's a horror geek, one's a bit of a jock.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. Oh yeah, they're quite amusing. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of new characters which I think work quite well. Um,
Yeah,
the
there's a
nice
character called Wes. I love him.
Yes, Wes, which is interesting and quite touching because when he gets offed, everybody on screen has a toast to Wes, which of course fits as a double tribute to the late Wes
Sure,
Craven.
and then at the end of the film, it's for Wes as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of sad, but yeah, there's a very sweet little tribute. Very sweet, and yeah, he turns out that he is the son of Judy,
Oh yes, of course. Who's now sheriff?
who's now sheriff. Yeah, Dewey's
Marley
gone off the
Shelton. Yeah,
rails, bless him. Yeah. But yeah, it kind of starts off outside of Woodborough with a young girl who you don't quite know how she's connected, but
yeah,
she's actually related to the little girl that was right at the beginning of the scene. So the young girl at the beginning of the scene does get attacked, but she doesn't get killed. She gets put into hospital, which then
yeah.
draws her older sister Sam over to see her, who brings her boyfriend Richie, who is played by Jack Quaid, who I spent hours, I say hours, like just sitting in the cinema going, where the hell do I know him from? I know him from somewhere. I know him from somewhere. And then I had to look him up when I got home and I went, he's in The Boys. He's been in quite a lot of things, isn't he, Jack
Of
Quaid?
course. Yeah, I'd forgotten. Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's the main character.
yeah. The good
Um,
kids, the funny, geeky, nervous kid in The
he's
Boys.
great in The
Who's
Boys.
he's lovely, isn't he? And you kind of get that vibe a little bit from him
I
in
thought,
this as well.
yeah, I thought he was a great character in this. In fact, I was rooting for him until, of course, something unfortunate is revealed. Because I thought he was funny, and oh, I can't believe I didn't even know he was from The Boys, even though I only watched The Boys last year. That's
Exactly.
disturbing.
Same here. Exactly. I was sitting in the cinema going, where the fuck do I know you from?
Do you
This
know?
is really going to annoy me. And
Do
as
you
soon as
know?
I found out who he was, I was, this has really annoyed me. I should know this.
It's that's worrying, isn't it? All
Mm,
round.
yeah.
Also, I think what ruined it, not ruined the film, what ruined my not being able to think sensibly that he was from The Boys is I was focusing on the fact that I'd found out his name was Jack Quaid, which meant nothing. But the more I watched it, and I never checked this, so I don't know if it's true, but the more I watched it, I was just thinking, I recognize him. Is it just because he looks like Dennis Quaid,
Yeah.
but younger? Does that mean
No,
he's Dennis
no,
Quaid's son?
no, I don't think so. I don't think he's any relation to him whatsoever because I was thinking that as well. I was like, that must be where I know him from.
He's
He's
got
Dennis
Dennis
Quaid.
Quaid's
No,
face
no, fucking not.
and name.
So I'm,
Um,
I'm going to look this up. I'm going to look this up now, but carry on.
because he looks more like Dennis Quaid than Dennis Quaid does. That's
He
ridiculous. I
must.
don't
He must.
know. I never checked, which says a lot of to how lazy I was in finding out. But that was distracting, and I'd totally forgotten The Boys, even though The Boys is really good.
It is really good. Yep, same. Yeah.
Total
Oh, he
outrage.
is. God damn it, he is Dennis Quaid's son.
He is.
Parents, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
Oh, of course, I forgot that Meg Ryan was with him. Wow, yeah, that's strange. Yeah,
Oh, we're rubbish. He's only
crumbs.
29. He's only 29, bless him.
Wow, he looks a bit old. Wow, that's astonishing. Yeah, he's really good, and I think she is
Yeah.
as well. The girlfriend, who's
Sam.
Sam Carpenter, which is
Yeah.
a very genre
Melissa
name.
Ferrara. It
Um,
is, yeah, it's very.
and I like that the twist because it's set up and it even mentions it in the conversation. And I like that the opening girl isn't killed like you expect her to be.
Mm,
She actually pulls through and proves to be a major character, doesn't she?
yes.
Which so far in the series hasn't happened. The people in the opening have always been a nice, easy kill scene. Um, and she gets wrong in this case. It's a nice throwback to the original Scream because she gets the name of the killer in the first stab wrong, I think.
Mm.
Oh no, she misremembers that there were two killers in it. I think that's the gist of it.
That's it, yeah.
Which is a nice kind of double reference there to the earlier films. Um, yeah, yeah, I think the new characters work really well for me. I think Jack
But
Quaid
yeah,
especially really good.
yeah.
Um,
They're all kind of like, all the people in Woodsboro and stuff are all related to the people that were in the first lot of killings and stuff. Basically, that's how the story is kind of linked, as the killers start appearing again, taking out people.
Yeah,
And yeah, this one does have a very high body count, doesn't it?
massive. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it has, I think, going back to the original, a strong sense of kind of suspense running through it as well. Along with the jokes, because the jokes are quite good. I mean, it's
Sure.
the stab series has gone on,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a sense of the characters are fully aware that they are kind of becoming part of what they call a requel, which
Yeah.
which is a term that is kind of used to call films like this one, you know, because it's not quite a reboot, but it's kind of a sequel. So
Yeah.
it's obviously it's a requel, and of
Yeah.
course that's all the rage right now with Ghostbusters and Halloween and the new Saw that came out and all these different things. Oftentimes having the same title as the originals, which is a bit confusing, rather than having a number. And in a quite nice touch, Stab is up to number 8, and the fans are all uproar because they've got worse
It's
and
gone
worse,
horrendous. Yeah.
which quite cleverly kind of undercuts any fan reaction to this, really, because they're addressing it throughout this movie that inevitably not everyone will be satisfied, whatever they do,
Sure.
whatever,
Yeah.
however
Yeah.
they twist this. I like that she's back. I like that Dewey's gone to seed, which I think is quite nice, and it's actually a really lovely performance, I think, by David Arquette.
Yeah. Once again, we love Dewey all the way through, right to the end.
Yes,
Him and
and
Gail have
Gail, yeah,
split up, and Gail doesn't live there anymore, so he's obviously gone a little bit on the rocks and has left his job and living in a shed, that kind of a thing.
yeah,
But yeah, the return of Sam and Richie and stuff to try and help, or ask Dewey for his help to try and find the killers and stuff, has kind of reinvigorated him, hasn't it?
yeah, and I
And then
think
when the
that's
whole
great.
team are, yeah, when the whole team are reunited, because Nev Campbell comes back, Gail comes back, even though Sydney gets the phone call from Dewey to
Yeah,
say, don't come back, it's happening again. But poor old Gail just gets a text message.
yeah, that's quite because they're different to the fourth one. They're brought back in a way that doesn't just feel shoehorned in, and I think maybe just enough time has passed. They're obviously a lot older than like we are. Oh God,
Absolutely, yeah.
than the original. And I think there's a real sense of nostalgia for this film anyway, because it's done so well and because you do have affection for these people.
And
It's
they
quite
had to
cool.
do it. Yeah, they had to do one thing though, didn't they? Because it's such a high body count and stuff. You can't just kill off all the characters that don't really matter. They had to choose someone out of the original cast to actually get
Yes,
killed this time, and it's really just it's very upsetting because they choose Dewey.
and it's extremely brutal as well.
Really brutal. Yes, that is one thing we need to talk about, because it's probably the goriest Scream movie ever.
Easily, yeah, by far, and yeah, not even just in blood terms, in
Just
the nature of
graphic
the killings.
detail and stuff,
Yeah,
yeah, with because they go for the kind of psycho thing again. They do a twist on the psycho shower scene in the new Scream, only this time they swap it for the Wes character. He
yeah,
gets a knife in the neck, but it's like you see the knife go in and come out the other side.
that's a fantastic effect, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
really disturbing, I
and
think.
then poor old Dewey pretty much just gets kind of cut in half,
Mm.
straight up the middle, one knife in the front, one in the back. Yeah.
And I'm guessing on purpose, because presumably any other kind of lesser death, people would have just been distracted by thinking, "Oh, he's going to be all right at the end because he was in 1, 2, 3, and 4."
Yeah, you know for a fact that he ain't getting up from that one.
He's been wounded so many times.
Yeah, exactly. As stoic and as strong as Dewey is, no one's getting up from that. And yeah, that was really upsetting.
Yeah, it's really powerfully
Damn you,
done.
Scream.
And the aftermath is really, really powerful as well when the realization dawns that that's what's happened. Yeah, it's
him coming out in a body bag out of the building and stuff. Yeah, very, very somber moment.
And it needed it, I think, and it does help everything else, the suspense, because you think, well, they've gone that far. That's all bets are off this time.
Yeah, and still at that point, you're pretty unaware as to exactly who the killer is. You've probably got quite a few things going on in your mind as to who it could be, because I know I did. I changed my mind so many times throughout the film, thinking, that's definitely him. That's definitely her. Nope.
Yeah.
Him. Oh, no, it's back to her again. Oh, no, this one. It could totally be this person.
It's rather clever, isn't it? Yeah, because I've seen a few people saying how obvious it was the whole way through, but I didn't think that at all.
It isn't, because they make you think that it's the obvious people to start off with, and then you get totally thrown off.
Which is exactly what happened in the original. The same thing. Those were the two most obvious things, but then it was misdirected somewhere else. But those two actors, Thingy and what's it? I've forgotten their name.
Which one?
The Killers.
Oh, the Killers, yeah.
Amber and Jack Quaid.
Yeah, Richie.
Yes, that's the name. Yes, yeah, I think they're very good. I was impressed by how disturbing they are, especially him, because he's such a likable character throughout. But maybe with an edge throughout that he's possibly not all he seems.
Yeah.
However, still enough to make me
I still do think sometimes it's a little bit far-fetched that Amber was dressed up in the Ghostface costume. I don't know who it was that she killed, but every time you see Ghostface, he's a good 6 foot something. she's a small little, barely 5 foot person.
A slip of a girl. Yeah, on stilts presumably. Yeah.
Sure.
Because
that's what she's doing.
Yeah, I doubt that does hold up, does it? When I'd like to rewatch it as soon as possible, but because it kind of did in the original. The thing I thought was quite nice is that because of how manic, what's his name, Stu is, and obviously Billy is more of a kind of controlled, quiet psychopath. I always thought it made sense. There's certain scenes where Ghostface is particularly kind of frenetic and manic, where you think, oh, in that case, it must have been Stu.
Yeah, that was Stu Ghostface. Whereas in this one, you surely it has to be Richie throughout most of it.
Maybe she did one that we never saw. Oh, you go and do that old woman.
Yeah.
That frail 86-year-old woman in Woodsboro.
Yeah, that we'll just mention.
Gail's nan.
No, maybe she did the one, the very first one.
Oh yeah,
she was on the phone to Tara at the time.
That's feasible.
So we'll go with that,
because she was quite slight as well, and she was caught off guard, and that's feasible. Rather than killing what's his name in the neck, strapping young man.
She definitely didn't do Dewey. Surely, had to be Richie.
Could barely lift the knives, I'd imagine.
But yeah, she's proper crazy, and her ending or her demise is very impressive.
It's really brutal. The whole end stretch is really brutal as well, isn't it?
Oh, I think there is one bit right before, obviously, because Sydney and Gail kind of gang up on Amber while Sam goes after Richie and tries to find her sister. The really funny bit when Amber shoots Courtney Cox, Gail, and she actually really does this. She stands in the doorway, Amber shoots her in the stomach, and she just goes, "Ow!" How often do you hear people in horror movies say "ow" when they get shot?
That really hurt. Ouch.
Yeah, ouch. A proper ouch. I was like, yeah, that's great. That's a definite Gail Weathers reaction to being shot. Like in a really pissed off way, like, you fuck what? Ow.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, it all hangs together really well, doesn't it? It's I think it's quite creepy at times. There's a moment which I suppose is a little similar to the going down. You shouldn't really go down to the basement bit in the first one, but that basement scene's really disturbing, like, in a strange way. Where she wanders down there, because at that stage, of course, you don't know who's the killer, and in retrospect, it changes completely when you realise Amber is. But Yeah, I thought that was really good. I thought it just had a sense of
Yeah,
tension while also
but
being
yeah,
pretty funny.
yeah, and kind of flirty as well in a strange way.
Yes, it's all tense in lots of different
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
And you don't know who's, you assume that scene is
it's
going to end in a killing, but it doesn't. And
no,
but it's all a bit off and strange.
yeah,
Um,
awkward
yeah,
and weird, but also yeah,
it does a lot of good things. I quite like there's little things in this. The cast's really good. I quite
yeah.
like that there's a lesbian character where they don't make a big deal about it. She's just there, and
She
it's
is the Randy character as well. Isn't
yes.
Randy her uncle? She's one of the
Oh
twins, and Randy's
yes,
her uncle, and
that's
she is
right.
totally him because she's sitting. They're watching Stab, like the first Stab,
So it's a
which basically
rerun. Yeah.
plays along the same as Scream. So Randy's sitting on the sofa saying, "Look behind you, look behind you." She's doing that exact same thing.
That's right. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
yeah,
it's clever, it's funny, it's a good nod to the original.
yeah, I like that. That's very good. Yeah, and she's really good. And there's the
Mm,
great I forgot again, I can't remember the character's names, but there's the nice touch of the guy, the jock. It's the jock, isn't it, that turns down
yeah,
sex with his
her
girlfriend
brother.
because he's
Yeah,
still not quite sure that she might not be the killer.
yeah.
And she's super
And
pissed
then
off.
for a moment, you're almost led to believe that she could actually be the killer.
Yes, and
I'm
I was
pretty sure at
thinking
one
that,
point I
yeah.
went, it is her. But it really isn't.
And
It
that
really isn't.
probably more feasible than Amber, maybe that way. Yeah, yeah, but that does
Yeah,
get you down that road.
exactly. Exactly. And yeah, everyone's linked to everyone. It turns out that Sam, who came with Richie to help her sister, is actually Billy Loomis's daughter.
Oh yeah, how do you feel about the use of Skeet in this?
Mm. Yeah, that's a very tenuous link, that is, isn't it? I
It's a
don't.
little, yeah,
I mean, the big reveal that she's Billy Loomis's daughter and stuff is feasible. I get that. That's fine. But she has visions. She's kind of having these psychotic episodes where she has these visions where Billy Loomis
mm,
like appears to her in mirrors to I don't know, what does he do? He tries to tell her to, you've got to fight this and rah, rah, rah,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. But the Billy Loomis in the mirror is fully grown, as he was, covered in stab wounds from when Sydney killed him in the first movie. So,
yeah,
Sam wouldn't have known him then.
yeah.
That's the bit I don't quite get. I'm like, this is a dodgy connection here.
And how did they
I,
do
I
it? How did they get Skeet back to do this stuff?
I don't know,
Hmm.
but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was like CGI to de-age him or
Maybe.
um
I mean, he's not in it for very long, and he is in it for like minutes at a time in mirrors and stuff.
that's
So,
entirely yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So it's not a clear shot. Yeah, that makes sense
no,
actually. There's I can't talk about it, I suppose, although it's been out. Well, there's a thing in Halloween Kills actually near the start where I came away thinking, wow, how they actually is that or, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Anyway, um yes, yes, yeah, I was okay with I think I was okay with the Billy stuff, although I could have lived without it. I didn't.
yeah. They could have. I think they kind of thought, oh shit, she's Billy's daughter. We're gonna have to try and link this somehow.
Yeah,
We'll
and I
do these random
suppose
flashbacks. We'll make it out that she's
yeah,
a bit mental and she sees visions of him.
because
But why
yeah,
did she have to
sure.
see him like that? She could have seen a young. Maybe that would have been even more difficult to do.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It does kind of throw you off again, I suppose, when it's this constant circling back because it ends up lots of references to the original, isn't it? And it ends back at
Mm,
Stu's house as well,
yes.
which is another kind of circular thing, which is quite cool. Um, yeah, and with like you said, with the Randy connection as well. Yeah, it's a really good movie, isn't it? It's
It is, yeah. Yeah, compared to 3 and 4, it holds
yeah,
up so much better. And yeah, the attention to detail, the gore,
yeah,
it's proper good. It's good for a requel. They try not to
mm,
make anything too pretentious while still keeping some pretentious type characters.
sure,
They
yeah,
kind they don't offend so many horror fans this time.
No, I think those guys that made it, I think they're true horror fans, and you get that sense from watching this. And indeed, and quite clever with it. So the kind of reasoning for the killers is the idea of a fan getting on his high horse, really, of thinking, well, the stab films have got so out of ideas that I can actually do better than this. I can get them some new material, and the same, and she's just tagging along, really, isn't she? Amber just wants to be part of something.
Yeah, part of the kind of gang.
Yeah, but I quite like the idea of being ahead of the game. If this movie was to get completely slated from the fans of the franchise, they've already made jokes about just that thing in the film itself, which is quite clever, especially when a franchise is this far in. And another thing which I quite liked, which may involve me admitting that I was a fan of Dawson's Creek, but at one point the characters in the film are watching the spooky episode from Dawson's Creek, which was early on. It's called The Scare, and Dawson's Creek, of course, was created and written by Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream and Scream 2 and was booted off 3 and 4. So that's quite a nice touch. Presumably a whole bunch of young people would have never even heard of it. Shocking.
No, that is the thing. I think one of my work colleagues, who is a very young lad, literally only just 20 years old, kind of went to see it, and I was like, wow, you don't even really know the first one. You weren't alive when the first one came out.
I think it will play well, though. I think it's good. Well, it presumably has, because it's done so well, but I think it should be doing enough for people that weren't around the first time, but also being a nice nostalgia trip for us.
Us lot that were,
and that's maybe the trickiest thing, isn't it? Not just to be a kind of gift for the fans, but it has to work as a new slasher film, with a sense of humor and all that stuff. Which I think was very good. Where do you think they can go from here? Because Scream 6, as far as I can tell, is already kind of in the works, because this one has been a big hit, which is a bit of a concern. I mean, I can only imagine they'll be looking for ways to maybe bring back other characters or other elements of the earlier ones.
Maybe they could totally go on a complete twist and like change it so Gail and Sydney become the killers, because they're so pissed off that Dewey got killed.
Yeah, because
they could go around killing off all these horror fans that are giving it all this. Okay, I'm writing it. This is Scream 7.
Scream 7.
Sydney and Gail did it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because they can't just keep coming back to, you got to come back to town again. It's all kicked off again.
Fuck's sake, man. If they're doing a Scream 6, how many years forward will they go as well? Because, like you say, this has gone 20 odd years.
Yeah, but they're rushing it in.
If they're going to bring another one out soon, why do they need to come back?
Well, yeah, that's a real stretch, unless, because it has to be something different, isn't it? They have to be the killers all get killed off in the start or something like that. Otherwise, you might end up in a kind of Scream 4 situation where everyone's back, but they really don't need to be, because there's not a lot going on. And Emma Roberts is here.
Oh, no, don't bring up... Yeah, whatever you do, don't bring back Emma Roberts.
She's okay.
I don't think they
survived.
can.
No. She's too busy.
Definitely didn't survive.
I suppose... Oh, no, Cotton Weary's dead in the story, isn't he? So, yeah, there's a limitation of who could come back. There was rumours, I'm sure... Oh, I think it was because of the connection to his house, but I know there were rumours about Stu / Matthew Lillard somehow being in this one. But that was because there'd been the shots of them doing scenes at his old house from the original. So that makes sense. But I had no idea. I didn't look at any spoilers before. I didn't realise that Billy was going to be in it or anything like that, which is quite a surprise. Yeah. Crumbs. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
We will, yep. There's no way of calling it. Who knows what will happen? Is it going to be the same guys directing again?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, they're totally on it. So,
cool.
So that in itself is a good sign. Yeah, they did a cracking job. It's a really good, tense film, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Very good.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's it for the Scream saga. Oh, I never really watched it. Did you ever watch the Scream TV series?
No, afraid not. Well, I say
Yeah.
afraid not. I don't think it was very good, was it?
Well, no, I watched a couple. Apparently, it did pick up the classic thing. Whoa, you just have to watch, 400 episodes, and it really picks up. Oh,
Oh,
brilliant.
yeah.
Apparently,
Well,
though,
thanks
this,
for that.
yeah, sign me up. The second series is quite a lot better. I seem to remember
Oh,
the
God, how many
hysteria.
series was there?
I think there was only three. I may be wrong, but there's definitely two, no more than
Mm.
three.
Was it like
Um,
24 episodes a bloody season?
I think it was a good few.
Mm.
I did watch maybe the first couple, and it got a bit annoying. And there was scenes of people saying things like, "Oh yeah, so the rules of surviving a TV horror show." Oh, fuck off!
Yay.
And they were unnecessarily talking about Hannibal and whatever other horror shows, and it all felt a bit, yeah, a bit hard work. Um,
Mm.
and it was a bit, from memory, it was a bit dry. But I only watched, as in not very bloody, but I only watched like the first, yeah, maybe two, and then I didn't think it was awful, but I just didn't think I wanted to stick around.
Did it
Um,
actually have anything? Did it have like ghost face or anything in it? Oh, God, actually, sorry. I'm reading the episode titles of season 2.
oh,
I know
is
what
that
you
your
did last
slasher
summer.
titles? Yes.
Psycho, Vacancy,
Yeah.
Happy Birthday to Me, Dawn of the Dead, Jeepers Creepers, Let the Right One In, Village of the Damned. Yeah, they're all named after
It's a bit random.
after yeah.
Yeah.
Although Dawn of the Dead, I would be interested.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how
Probably
the
nothing.
titles would fit with
Yeah,
the.
nothing to do with zombies. I'm sure. It says
I
the
don't.
death of a loved one hits everyone hard. George Washington High School goes into lockdown. Suspicions rise amongst the Lakewood Five. I have no idea what that means.
Mm, I don't think it was the Ghostface. I think it was a different outfit from memory. But I may be wrong.
Hmm.
Maybe I should just give it another chance. I don't know.
Don't know.
But
Jury's
yeah,
out on that one.
I think the I'm pretty sure the Hysteria Continues guys seem to suggest, that it was almost worth sticking around the second series. I think that's, a thing. Um, but yeah, nobody really talks about it, so maybe it was a bit of a damp squib.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, yeah, so obviously, presumably, if you've got this far, you have already seen Scream 5. And
Yay!
in
I
which
hope you loved
case,
it.
yes, yeah, let's hope, because it was good. And it seems to be quite well liked from what I can tell. So that's
Yeah.
excellent news. We have a kind of a different franchise next month, Sarah, of sorts. We're going to be not covering all of them because there's about 20 of them in total. We're going to be
Yeah.
looking at three from different eras and generations, three of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films from the
Yay.
last 50 or so years. The first one from 1974, the classic, of course. The remake from 2003, and
Yay.
the one that Sarah mentioned at the start, which is the latest incarnation. Another 20 years have passed, and Netflix have got their own Texas Chainsaw, which has just been loaded on today, I think, right? Today was the first day.
I think so, yeah.
Crumbs. Yeah, so we're going to be chewing over those, which is quite interesting, I think.
Excellent. Yeah, it'll be a good one.
Yeah, one kind of beloved horror classic, one remake that kind of had a mixed reaction, but I always rather liked, and one I haven't seen yet, but you have. So
Yeah,
yes.
I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this.
Oh, yes. So yeah, join us at the end of March for that one.
Yes.
But until then, I think that's it, Sarah.
It is. Thank you very much for joining
yeah.
us.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, do drop us a line or whatever. Send smoke signals if you enjoyed it. That would be excellent. But
Cool.
thanks for listening, and see you next time. Bye, Sarah.
Good night.